Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the November meeting of the Randolph County Board of Commissioners. Our year is continuing to move right along, and holidays are coming up, and just seems like we just barely got started on January not so long ago, but time waits on no one, as we know, and glad to have each one of you here tonight. We officially call this meeting to order, and for those that are watching from home, on Facebook or Meta or whatever it is now, YouTube, we welcome you also to our meeting tonight. We have a big audience tonight, interest in things that are going on here in the county, and we'll have time for each one of those as we deal with our agenda tonight, our public comment period. So we do welcome you for our meeting, and tonight, Chaplain and Reverend Michael Mabe is here to do our invocation, and then we will have our Pledge of Allegiance. Will you please stand?
I just want to say it's an honor to serve as a chaplain in Randolph County. I appreciate it. Let's pray. Heavenly Father, we come to you right now in Jesus' name. Lord, I thank you for this great nation, Lord, that we live in. Lord, I thank you for this board, Lord, their families, Lord, how they've sacrificed to serve here. Lord, I pray that you'd fill them with wisdom, fill all those in attendance tonight with your spirit and your respect. And Lord, I pray that we can keep our finger on the pulse of the people of Randolph County. Lord, we're just servants. Lord, I thank you for life and liberty and for all who serve. Lord, I pray that everything said and done would be filled with your word. Lord, that we can draw courage from that. And Lord, we're just so thankful to be able to just stand with others today in these last days. Lord, as so many come against us, Lord, we live in a day where evil is called good and good is called evil. But God, if you'll fill us with your spirit, Lord, we'll do our best to serve you. And we plead the blood of Christ over all these things, for he's the one that's truly worthy, yes. And it's in his name we pray. And all God's people say, Amen.
Amen. Thank you, Mike.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. You sound great. Please be seated. We're going to have a special recognition here in just a moment, but I see so many familiar faces. I know a large group of our ministers is represented in our audience tonight. I'd like to recognize our district attorney, Andy Gregson's here tonight. Lewis Dorsett, Mayor of Archdale's here tonight. And Gary Mason, I think I saw Gary. He's here with the ministers, but former police chief of City of Asheboro, and his dad was the first sheriff I worked with in Randolph County, and lots of memories. His brother is a former member of this board. So thank all of you tonight. You're all important. You're all a part of this business as we try to serve you, represent you as we go forward and conduct the business of this county. So at this time, I'm going to call on Steve Myers with the Randolph County Sheriff's Department for a special recognition.
Good evening, Commissioners, Mr. Chairman. Captain Chris Manus began his career with the Randolph County Sheriff's Office as a part-time jailer in January 1992, and then he became a full-time jailer in September of 1992. Chris became a deputy sheriff on March the 8th, 1993, and was transferred to the House Arrest Division. He completed basic law enforcement training in August of 1993. Chris was transferred to Crime Prevention Officer in January of 1994, also handling the Crime Stoppers program and teaching the CARE program to the Randolph County schools. Chris was transferred to full-time CARE officer in the SRO division in February of 1997. In December of 1997, he was promoted to detective and transferred to the Criminal Investigations division. He was promoted to detective sergeant in January of 1999, and then promoted to lieutenant in criminal investigations in July of 2000. Chris was transferred to lead the crime scene unit and over the evidence control division in October of 2005. Chris was promoted to captain over the civil division and the fleet supervisor in June of 2009. In March of 2016, he was transferred and promoted to major over the sheriff's office with primary duties overseeing the SRO division and the Randolph County Courthouse. In December of 2018, he returned to criminal investigations as a division captain, where he is finishing his career. Chris completed general instructor certification in August 1997 and is a general instructor for the Detention Officer Certified course and basic law enforcement training at both Randolph Community College and Sandhills Community College. Chris received his advanced law enforcement certificate from the North Carolina Sheriff's Education and Training Standards Commission, the highest distinguished accomplishment for a law enforcement officer, on August 31st, 2015. In retirement, Chris plans to spend more time with his wife, Carla, and his children, Allie, Cassie, and Logan. However, he intends to remain on an active reserve deputy with the Sheriff's Office and continue to teach BLET, so his many years of training and experience will continue to benefit the law enforcement community. Chris will be greatly missed by his law enforcement family, but rest assured that he will remain an active part of the Sheriff's Reserve Division. Captain Chris Manist is recognized for 29 years and 10 months of dedicated and faithful service to the citizens of Randolph County. Thank you for your service.
Chris is one of those officers in the Sheriff's Department that I get to see and have spent time with over my tenure on this board. And he's going to be missed greatly. Now, you noticed when Steve was reading, he said he was getting credit for 29 years and 10 months. Now, Chris was not recognized by the county when he was working part-time, but the state of North Carolina recognized him from day one. So, as far as his retirement's concerned, he's got 30 years. And he told me when he realized that he was actually paying the state of North Carolina to get to work another day, he decided it's time to quit. So, seriously, Chris, you're going to be greatly missed. I'll miss you personally. You've been a part of my tenure here and a part of the things I do and serving the people of this county. And God bless you in your retirement. And grateful appreciation to Chris Manist in recognition of 29 years of service. We couldn't get to 10 months on there. November the 1st, 2021, Randolph County Board of Commissioners. God bless you, Chairman. It's time for our public comment period. I'm going to ask our attorney, Mr. Morgan, to please read the rules for our engagement tonight.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The rules of public comment period are as follows. The public comment period will be limited to 15 minutes at the beginning of the meeting. If more time is required, it will be at the discretion of the board. Each speaker must give his or her name both orally and in writing before speaking. Speakers will be limited to 3 minutes. Comments are to be directed to the board as a whole and not to one individual commissioner. Response, discussion, or action concerning issues raised during the public input session will be at the discretion of the board. Speakers shall be courteous in their language and presentation. Speakers should not discuss matters which concern the candidacy of any person seeking public office or matters in current or anticipated litigation.
Thank you, Ben. Madam Clerk?
Mark Wilburn.
Mark?
Good evening, Chairman Fry and the Commissioners of Randolph County. I'm part of a group in Randolph County of pastors who go across denominational lines and pray for our county and seek what's best for the county of Randolph County. And our desire tonight is to present to you a resolution of the Randolph County Board of Commissioners declaring the county of Randolph, North Carolina, to be a sanctuary for life and urging the citizens of the county of Randolph to promote and defend the inalienable right to life and the inherent dignity of all human beings, including the preborn, from conception or fertilization through all stages of development. I come on behalf of this group and our church families just to speak on behalf of the unborn. There's an atrocity that's taken place in America since 1973. At 3,000 babies are put to death daily in the United States of America for choice. As a minister of the gospel of Jesus Christ, where I pastor at Balfour Baptist Church as the associate pastor under the leadership of Pastor Gary Mason, we know that there's an outcry from the house of God on this matter. We know that these children are being put to death without a voice. And we stand firm together as this group of ministers and our church members are here tonight to also show they're in favor of this resolution. So, Chairman Fry, I would like to hand you a copy of this resolution to hand to the rest of the members, if that's okay.
Yes, sir. Thank you, Mark. Thank you very much.
As a grandfather, a father who has a son who can't have children, me and my wife love our 2 grandchildren, but we wanted 20 or more as grandparents to love on. And so we feel through prayer, through supplication, through the speaking of the Holy Spirit, if we could start this in Randolph County for unborn children to have a safe place to be born and to be looked after. We have agencies, which you'll hear from here just shortly after Dr. Tysinger, about the availability of things that is available to those young ladies who get pregnant and may not want the child. There is something more than abortion. And our churches are banding together to be able to help these young ladies, to help mentor them, and to help them with the pregnancy of their child. My son, my oldest boy, and his wife can't have children, and adoption is just crazy hard. So I think someone's figured out how to make money off of it. So why don't we, as faith believers, as the good people of Randolph County of the great state of North Carolina, take a stand tonight and begin to ponder this and be on the right side of history. 30 years down the road, I don't want to look back to this night and say I was on the wrong side of history, because God wants His creation to be born, to be and to live. And the statistics are staggering out there.
Pastor Wilburn, that's your 3 minutes, sir.
Yes, sir. I'll yield it. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Brent Tysinger.
Good evening. My name is Brent Tysinger. I'm part of the same pastors group as Pastor Mark Wilburn. I am a local pastor, and I am a lifelong resident of Randolph County, and I am honored to speak to you tonight. It is interesting tonight that we are meeting on Worth Street. Many folks know that Worth Street was named for Jonathan Worth, who was the 39th governor of North Carolina. He was also the treasurer of the North Carolina Confederacy, and he was a Randolph County native. But perhaps fewer people know that within the Worth family was another man named Daniel Worth. 164 years ago this very month, Daniel preached a sermon in this county that started his trouble. His sermon was one that encouraged the total abolition of slavery. Daniel Worth was arrested and tried in Asheboro and sentenced to spend 12 months in jail. Imprisoned in Greensboro, North Carolina, in an unheated cell, he nearly died. His feet froze, and he was left a cripple for the remainder of his life. Out on bail, Worth escaped to the north to the church of the famous abolitionist Henry Ward Beecher. Reverend Beecher stated that he wasn't worthy to stoop and unfasten Worth's shoes. Daniel Worth died at an early age in December of 1862. You say, well, Pastor Brent, great. Thank you for that history lesson, but what does that have to do with Randolph County becoming a safe county for the unborn? And I say the answer is simple. There was an evil, wicked spirit behind American slavery in 1857. That same spirit was behind the eugenics movement that led Planned Parenthood founder Margaret Sanger to call minority populations human weeds in the early 1900s. That same spirit was in Nazi Germany when the Third Reich perpetrated the Holocaust, killing 6 million Jews in the early to mid 1940s. And it is the same spirit that is behind the American abortion movement that has legally destroyed at least 65 million unborn children since Roe versus Wade was decided in 1973. In this world, whether we like it or not, there is right and there is wrong. There is a moral law, not created by ourselves, but given to us by the moral lawgiver, which is Almighty God. We transgress God's law at our peril. And God's law is very clear. We should not kill innocent human beings because we are all created in His image. My hope and prayer today is that Randolph County in 2021 and after will be found to be on the right side of history on this issue. That we will be led by the same spirit that guided Daniel Worth to give a voice to the voiceless and to lay down his life for his enslaved neighbor. That we in this county will understand that God, yes, God, created us all, and that we all have value. Red, yellow, black, white, born and unborn, we are all worthy of respect, dignity, and protection from oppression, abuse, and injustice. I believe that the resolution to be presented is a step toward that. Thank you all for allowing me to speak to you tonight. May God bless each and every one of us.
Thank you. Thank you.
Carolyn Vaughn.
Good evening. I'm Carolyn Vaughn. I'm a resident of Randolph County, and I'm also the executive director of Your Choices Randolph. We were formed years ago in 1997 to help men and women who found themselves in unplanned pregnancies. And since that time, that has been our focus, is coming alongside those men and women. In North Carolina in 2018, the most recent year we have data for, 27,581 abortions took place in North Carolina. That's 76 per day. In Randolph County, 154 abortions took place. That may not seem like a great big number compared to some of those other numbers, but I know and can speak directly about how abortion affects not just an unborn child, but a mother and a father. So if you take that and multiply, we're talking 462 lives. Then, if you talk about the other children they might have who will definitely be affected by the fallout from abortion, you're talking so many more numbers. What I see every day are men and women who are traumatized by the choice of abortion. They think that that procedure is a solution. It's, in fact, a long-term solution to a very short-term problem. We offer lots of resources and can come alongside and help men and women who are struggling with that. We can connect them with churches who can provide resources. We work with other agencies. We provide classes and lots of material items and help knock down a lot of the barriers that cause women to choose abortion. So many times they choose abortion not as a choice that they want, but because they can see no other way to respond to the pressures that are going on in their lives. We're here to try to help that, and I advocate for this proposition because I feel that we have the resources within our county to meet those needs in other ways. Thanks for your time.
Thank you, Carolyn. Thank you. I want to say something, maybe another commissioner does too, but we're going to hear from whoever is signed up tonight. So if we go beyond our 15 minutes, whoever's on that list will get to speak tonight. So I'll tell you that up front. But much it's been said from these speakers about the taking of innocent lives and of abortion. And since in the last 3 years, and Commissioner Paxton and his wife Wanda has gotten me sort of involved a little bit or coming to some of these Your Choices meetings. The issue goes way beyond the loss of that life, and I've heard testimonies from adult women who went through an abortion, who still live with those scars and the guilt every day of their life, and how it has affected them. So it doesn't end with the taking of the child. It goes on in the family and all of those that I've seen. I haven't experienced that in my family, but it is prevalent in Randolph County. It is an issue. And we will bring this resolution. Our attorneys will look at it, managers, and it will be on our December agenda for an action item at our December meeting. So thank you for bringing this to us tonight. Anyone else, anything that you want to say before we go over these other names?
I have a couple of things. First, Carolyn, do you have any, sorry. My chair's too high, my mic's too far away. That's what short people get. Do you have any statistics on the ratio or the numbers of children that are aborted by race? Do you have any kind of a breakdown by race? Because I've been told that there is a very disproportionate number of black children that are aborted.
That is true. It's at least 60.
Come to the microphone, please.
That is true. The racial breakdown is about 60% of the abortions that take place within the African American community, and most abortion clinics are positioned in low-income areas, specifically to take advantage of that. And then the other 40% is represented primarily by Hispanic and white women.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. I think it's interesting that this would be presented tonight, because also on the agenda for tonight is a request by social services to make this adoption awareness night. And so these issues are so wrapped up, because if we work to end abortion, then our job is just beginning, because there has to be that outreach, not just by Your Choices, but by our faith communities, to these women who are in this position to start with. And for whatever would cause them to seek that as a solution, then that's a ministry for us. And then when these children are born, and perhaps those women need to be connected with resources, when these children may need homes, if they're put up for adoption, if parents, young mothers need more education, if they need more resources, if they are raising their children in poverty, then we're not absolved of that. Our work is just beginning. So thank you for being here. Thank you for your commitment to the unborn, and I ask you to continue to work to support those children after they get here. I know Dr. Jackson's church has a home for children. I know Jeff Joyce can probably speak to this better than me, but I just read something this morning about the Baptist Children's Home opening 2 more homes. So there's a tremendous need out there, and we need to rise up and help meet that. And if we rise up and do that as people of faith, then I won't say we're doing it better than government, but I'll say we're doing what God has called us to do. So just turn that over in your minds, and thank you very much for being here.
Good. All right. Any other commissioner? Anything?
Mr. Chairman, since I'm uniquely involved with this organization and have been for several years, my wife said in for a row speaks routinely in churches through Randolph County, and thank you, ministers, for allowing her and myself to come and speak on this very subject. This is a proclamation that we will consider very seriously, and we want all of you folks to know that this is not just a local little issue either. This is a big issue, and there's organizations out there, like you say, they're there every day to perform abortions and try to talk people into abort children. And it's a sad society that we have where you do that, but I want to thank all of you folks for coming out tonight and speaking, and Carolyn, thanks for coming and speaking for your choices as well. And it's a joint effort, folks. It is indeed for everybody that's here.
All right. Before we call another name, I forgot to mention, you'll notice Commissioner Kenny Kidd is not with us tonight. He got sort of an emergency phone call yesterday afternoon, Sunday afternoon, from a family client of his in Virginia, asking him to be up there today to meet with them. Something had to be taken care of. He sent me a text just before the start of our meeting, and he was still up in Virginia and would not be able to make it back in time for our meeting tonight. So that's the reason that he's not here. But I do know that Commissioner Kidd is strongly in support of this issue. He and I met with a lot of these ministers that are here this afternoon a few weeks back to get an introduction of this issue. And as far as the issue, I didn't need an introduction. That's one of the things that my dad, who pastored a church for 37 years, stood for and preached from the pulpit and was strongly opposed to in all of his ministry and in his personal life and his spiritual and his political beliefs. And I'd been aware of it and opposed to it for all of my life. But we thank you for bringing it tonight, and it will be on our December agenda. Thank you. Other one?
Maria Faust.
Good evening, Commissioners. My name is Maria Faust, and I am a 10th grader from Southwestern Randolph High School. I'm not scared of uncomfortable conversation. I believe that is necessary in some instances, especially when we wish to grow. We must stop and go outside of our comfort zones. The uncomfortable conversation that I wish to have with you is that most people assume that Randolph County is made of mostly racists. When I mention a slur said at school or a racist comment that is said by my peers, I met with the same mentality. Well, this is Randolph County. What do you expect? But not me, though. They make sure to include that part every single time. That's uncomfortable for me. As a black woman who has lived here almost my whole life, it's uncomfortable for my parents. It's uncomfortable for my siblings. It's uncomfortable for my black friends. And honestly, I don't believe it. I do not believe that the majority of my home is filled with discrimination and racism and hate. But that statue, the one supporting soldiers who fought to keep other people, my people who looked like me, and in some cases were the same ages as me, is not really helping my case here. The statue does not belong in the heart of Asheboro. And although bringing the relocation of it might stir up an uncomfortable conversation, I believe that this is a conversation that should be had. Thank you for your time and consideration.
Thank you, Maria.
Tammy Coley.
Good evening. My name is Tammy Coley, and thank you so much for giving me an opportunity to speak with you today. I grew up in Randolph County. I went to Lindley Park School. I went to Asheboro Junior High back before the name changed to whatever it is now. And I went to Asheboro High School. I played the saxophone in the band. Very proud of being from Asheboro. I since moved away. I went to school at UNC, go Tar Heels, and moved away, spent some time in Atlanta, some time in Charlotte, and now we're back here in Asheboro. But before I get to that, my dad is Clyde Faust, and my mom and dad own several businesses here in Randolph County. Today represents 5 years since my dad died. My dad was an amazing man. Some of you may have known him. He never gave up on his dreams. When I think about everything my dad did with his businesses, when I think about the fact that he had to acknowledge and accept that we live in a county that chooses to honor the Confederacy with a monument at our county seat. I think about my dad being a black entrepreneur, and he owned a funeral home. That was one of the businesses, and anytime he had to get a death certificate for that family, or some of the rental properties that he owned, anytime he needed to go pay the property taxes, having to acknowledge that monument honoring the Confederate soldiers. That makes my dad's legacy even stronger in my mind. What a strong man to have endured what he did. Let's move on forward to today. My husband and I told you I moved away, so I'm married now. My husband and I recently moved back to Asheboro. We have a nice home out on Mountain Lake Road, beautiful mountain scenery. I was so excited to move back to Asheboro, to be here with my family. I cannot believe, I don't want to believe, that 51% of my new neighbors want to honor the people who fought to keep my ancestors enslaved and to prevent me from being able to accomplish what I have, to be able to enjoy the luxuries that I do today, that our county wants to honor those people who wanted to keep my ancestors enslaved. It's painful for me to think that I moved back to a place that would want to do that, but I don't believe that. I don't believe the majority of our county wants to do that. I don't. I want to be very clear that that monument needs to be taken down. It needs to move. It's very important that we, as a county, acknowledge who we really are. Any individual has a right to honor whoever they please on their property. Our government...
Mrs. Coley, you have 15 seconds.
Our government has an obligation to only honor those who are the best at representing who we are. That monument needs to move. Thank you for giving me the time.
Thank you.
Dwayne Roberts.
Good evening, Darrell, Hal, commissioners, and two ladies that keep this going. I'm Dwayne Roberts, a past commander, Military Order Stars and Bars, present Lieutenant Commander, Military Order Stars and Bars, Garnet Pettigrew, number 67, out of Guilford County. I'm also present commander, Sons of Confederate Veterans of Randolph County. And did you realize that Jesus was a Southerner? He was born in southern Judea. That's my father, and my father created everyone equally. We're all created equally. To say that we've done something to promote white supremacy or racism, my people had no part of that. You have had no part of that, and I haven't had any part of it. The Sons of Confederate Veterans has a vetting system to make sure that no racist group or individual gets into this organization. If they do find out, they are expelled, but we do have a new, stricter vetting system for this organization. This is my property. This is my ancestors' property. It's your property because I paid taxes here. They paid taxes here. And thank you so much. Do what God has you up at your job to do, as was just mentioned. Thank you.
Dwayne.
Alan Lamb.
I'm Alan Lamb. I'm a resident of Randolph County in Worthville. Our monuments are here for the preservation of history. War, all war, is about money. You can sugarcoat any war ever fought. It was always about money, wealth. These people left their home fires to fight for the second independence of their nation. There were not a bunch of slave owners that went to go fight. They all had many reasons. Some were actually drafted, conscripted. Some volunteered because they wanted to go see the elephant. But a majority of them were not slave owners. And that is really not the issue of our Confederate history. I think our monument should stay there. This area has been designated a museum. People will say, put them in a museum. It's already here. It's at the museum. And for as tourism and commerce, well, wouldn't you like to think somebody's going to come to Asheboro and be a tourist and see the great things we have to offer? And I believe that the folks that want the monument down are not really free, that they've been shackled by the chains of ignorance and don't realize what the Confederacy is all about. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Mark Kemp.
Good evening, all of you. My name is Mark Kemp. I am resident and native of Asheboro. I was born and raised here. Like her, I moved off for a while and came back because I'm proud of Asheboro and I love Asheboro and Randolph County. And it's wonderful to be back. I really think so. But as long as that statue continues to stand in front of this public courthouse, we as a county are saying that we choose to celebrate the sale of human beings, adults as well as children. Children like 11-year-old Nancy, who Jesse Vestal sold to Simon Guerin on October 25, 1799 for $210. Children like 17-year-old Haney and 16-year-old Critty, who Anderson Johnston sold to Joshua Craven on October 23, 1812 for a total of $750. Children like 7-year-old Henderson and 4-year-old Jane, who Jesse Tomlinson sold to Eli Moffett on October 27, 1856 for a total of $850. Children who lived and laughed and loved and played, and it's really good to hear people talking about children tonight. because these were children just like your children or your grandchildren. How do you think your descendants would feel if men who fought for the right to rip your children from your arms and put a price tag on them were honored in front of this courthouse 200 years from now? But besides that, celebrating the Confederacy in public places with public funding is simply anti-American. It was anti-American when those things went up during the Jim Crow years, and it's anti-American that they're still standing today. These statues honor people who killed American soldiers that fought and died to defend the United States and our way of life. I'm often perplexed when I see people flying both the American flag and the Confederate flag. You can't be both. You're either American or you're not American. And the Confederacy was not only not American, it was anti-American. This has nothing to do with the telling of history. There's no doubt that the Civil War is part of American history and should be taught, just as all wars that America has been involved in should be and are taught. But we teach American history in classrooms and in museums where we can provide context for that history. We don't raise statues of the Japanese soldiers who bombed Pearl Harbor, even though some descendants of those soldiers likely live in the United States today. There are no statues of the men who flew airplanes into the Twin Towers. Most of us would quite understandably find such a thing utterly obscene. And yet, there are people who continue to rationalize celebrating Confederate monuments in our public places, despite the fact that those Confederates did basically the same thing the 9/11 terrorists did when at 4:30 a.m. on April 12, 1861, they fired on Fort Sumter.
Mr. Kemp,
It is a travesty that we're sitting here in 2021 arguing over whether or not it is right to celebrate enemies of the United States of America. It is most certainly not right. Thank you for letting me speak.
Michaela Trogdon.
Good evening. My name is Michaela Trogdon, and I'm a resident of Randolph County. I can't wait to leave this town. When I graduate college, I'm never coming back. Get out of Asheboro, there's nothing here for you. These are just a few examples of the words I consistently heard among my peers growing up, and more often than not, it was my Black peers who uttered these words. It is my belief that some of Randolph County's key historical events and politics helped to paint a narrative for many young African American students to believe that they can never find their place here, that their only chance at success was getting out and never looking back. While you may not realize it, for some of my Black peers who leave Randolph County and vow to never return, a part of the disconnect is the lack of identity with community and returning to a hometown whose longstanding monument is a tribute to its Confederate allegiance. For many, it is a visible contribution to one of the reasons for the exodus. They opt instead for communities where there is a melting pot for identification and representation more deserving of their talents, community service, and brain power. But here are the facts. In the Confederate Constitution, Article 1, Section 9, Clause 4, they make it impossible to outlaw Negro slavery. At least 14 men from Randolph County were executed for refusing to join the Confederacy. Many more were sent to salt mines and forced to work hard labor jobs for refusing to fight. There were thousands of slaves bought and sold in Randolph County. Children as young as 11 months were torn apart from their families and sold off. Sometimes these children were sold off to settle another man's debt, and young girls were even given to white men as gifts. There are slave deeds to prove it. After the Civil War ended, the United Daughters of the Confederacy pushed to have history books in the state replaced with new books that promoted the narrative of happy slaves and Northern aggression. These books even glorified the KKK, and we have evidence of one of these books in our own library that was used until the 1940s. As a two-time HBC graduate of Hampton University, I value the richness of my history. I honor those who came before me, paved the way, and fought for the rights and freedoms I have today. However, Randolph County has somehow managed to remain stuck in time. The issues of the past are still very much issues of the present. For me, as a young African American professional, the Confederate monument paints a picture of racism, not progression. The continual dismissive nature of this matter paints the picture that African Americans, that me and my peers and our significance are less valued, that our voices are unheard or appreciated in Randolph County. The precedent has been set that issues of race and equality can wait until later. However, time waits for no one. My generation is next to take the reins, and it would be a travesty for Randolph County to be a place where young Black professionals refuse to come or return to. Why be remembered for holding a fort to a lone monument that continues to represent an era that enslaved African Americans? It is a symbol of your heritage, not mine, not my peers, nor my family, nor my people. It is a reminder for me that holds more significance than our ideas, our businesses, our intellect, and potential contributions and relationships. The monument is a symbol and it speaks for you, not for me. It stands in the center of our community, an idol of racism located at the helm of our local governing body. On behalf of my generation and the future of progressive Randolph County, I'm requesting that the statue be removed. Thank you.
Marquez Cassidy.
Good evening. My name is Marquez Cassidy. Asheboro is noted often as the heart of North Carolina. As it sits in the center of the state, is it ironic that what sits in the city center, the heart of the city, is a Confederate statue? As this is a part of history, it doesn't have to be a relic of Asheboro and Randolph County's future. This cannot be the representation of the heart of this city and this county. I'm a graduate of Berklee College of Music in Boston, Massachusetts, the #1 contemporary music school in the world. They celebrated the diversity and music of all cultures and all people. As I've returned back home, I see the world differently, beyond my culture and my experience. I hope Asheboro, Randolph County is a county that celebrates its diversity and not its preferences. You remember how the world felt, not just by a pandemic, but when George Floyd was killed, a Black man, yes, but more importantly, a man. Young kids and young adults, white, Black, Hispanic, and others hit our streets downtown and gathered around for a cause, but what was interesting wasn't that people were protecting their businesses from the so-called threat of being vandalized, but people were protecting the notorious Hugo. Isn't it interesting, the object that's lifeless, what was constructed, what was made, that has no feelings or emotions, still invokes a particular feeling and emotion? As a fact, after the Civil War ended, many Confederates tried to rewrite history and claim that slavery wasn't the reason they went to war. In this effort, the United Daughters of the Confederacy started a campaign to put up these monuments that would not only honor soldiers, but also glorify the Confederate cause they fought for. Some of you remember the special that was publicized in the media years back as The Life and Death of Asheboro. Asheboro was noted, among others, as one of the fastest dying towns, cities in America. From their view, it was the changing economy and jobs that were leaving and going overseas for cheaper labor and the changes within the manufacturing industry. The life and future of Asheboro will not be from who or what has left, but from who and what still remains. Images, symbols, ideologies of oppression, racism, and superiority can't be what is left to salvage and hold on to within the county seat. This isn't a memorial for the dead, but a reminder to the minority of what and who still remains in control here. As our county commissioners who are elected for not some of the people's interest, but for all people's interest, I pray you take into account the interest of we, the people, Black, Hispanic, Asian, Native American, and others who make the city diverse. We, the people, who make a city of many hues. We, the people, whose voice and vote should matter to you as well. We, the people, are here, and we, the people, have spoken. Thank you.
Thank you, Marquez.
Roger Johnson.
Good evening. My name is Roger Johnson. I live down in the EREC community. I did not intentionally come here to speak tonight, and I see right now that I'm basically outnumbered, but I love history, all history. what's black history, white history. We all have a history. But it just breaks my heart when I see us erasing history, when I see us changing history. You know, all wars, really, whoever the victor is, writes the books. And the Southern history, basically, most of what we have was written from a Northern point of view. I have a number of ancestors that fought in the Confederacy because they were in the South. They fought for their homeland. Most of them at that time could not even read or write. Not a one of them owned a slave. Most of them really didn't even own the land they was on. They were just tenant farmers. And why did they fight? They fought because their nation had been invaded. These monuments do not represent slavery. They represent the people who fought for the South to preserve their way of life. When the United States broke away from England, it was to form a government where they could govern themselves the way they should be governed. And we had gotten somewhat away from that by the time the Civil War came along. If you read the Confederate Constitution, it's basically very, very similar to the United States Constitution. But today, as we today have gotten so far away from the Constitution, a lot of our laws really today are unconstitutional. Well, the same thing was going on in those days. But I think this Confederate monument represents the people of the South, and I think personally that it should stay there. And if there's ever a controversy over what we do with it, let the people of the county decide. I heard someone say that she didn't think 51% of the people would vote to keep it here. I personally think that more than 51% of the people would vote to keep it here, because I think most of the people in Randolph County, it means something to them. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Robert.
Ronnie Saunders.
My name is Ronnie Saunders. I'm a lifelong resident of Randolph County. I had descendants on this monument thing. I've had descendants fight for both sides. Okay, we was Americans then. We are Americans today. We was Americans. My grandfather that fought for the North was an American. My grandfather that fought for the South was an American. We was all Americans. The only thing is we seceded from the Union. Okay, that was it. And it wasn't nothing over the slavery so much as it was the taxes. And they wanted rice and cotton. The Northerners did, for pennies on the dollars. Not only that, where did slavery first start? Okay, Boston, Massachusetts. All right, and yes, I mean, even there was a colonel that fought, and I can't recall his name, but there was a colonel that fought for the North in Gettysburg. Okay, that held enslaved people. Okay, also, and this was why he was fighting for the North. So now, you know, I mean, let's look at it from the right way. I mean, it wasn't just the South, just like Lincoln said in the Emancipation Proclamation. You know, the fact that I lost my train of thought, but the fact that It just surpasses me that, I mean, history is history. History needs to be preserved, okay? But there's nobody that needs to draw 75,000 troops to invade his own country from the North. That's what I was trying to think of, and that's what he did. he sent everybody, let's draw up 75,000 to put down the rebellion. Well, what was we in the first Revolutionary War? The first Revolutionary War, all right? The Revolutionary War. Okay, we was considered the rebellion because we was wanting to self-govern. No difference here. And there's a law that, from 2015 that should keep that monument in place. I'm sorry, but the law needs to be followed, in my opinion. And I thank you kindly, sirs and ladies, for allowing me to speak this evening. God bless.
Thank you, Ronnie. Thank you. All right. That concludes our public hearing tonight. Thank all of you who participated. Obviously, this is an issue that goes forward. We're about to hear our report on our museum feasibility study. We're going to take about a 5-minute recess here. If some of you want to leave after our presentations, we'll give you an opportunity to do that. You're all welcome to stay, of course, for the remainder of our agenda tonight. Thank you. All right. We'll come to order and continue with our agenda tonight. Our next item of business is the consent agenda.
Can you turn the mic up? I can't hear you, sir.
Mike, I'm on.
There we go.
The next item is our consent agenda. Just a couple of comments. I know on the Zeb Holden appointment to the Randolph Community College Board of Trustees, Dr. Shackelford had requested that that would be their choice to replace George Lagarella. And also, we did have another member of our Planning and Zoning Board, Ralph Maudlin, who passed away recently, about a week or so ago. So that creates another opening there. If anybody has any suggestions, you bring those to Hal or whatever. And
Mr. Chairman, Mr. Modlin was at our October meeting.
I thought he was. I mean, yeah.
He
sudden.
participated in the October meeting. He had been fighting very diligently, but he, in his words, he said he was going to come to these meetings as long as he could.
Yeah.
And he was here in October. And I can just tell you, as somebody who's sat with that board, he was always very diligent and had a great personality, and he really served our citizens of Randolph County very well in a job that doesn't get a lot of appreciation or any thanks, and you should know that as well as anyone. But he was a great asset to Randolph County.
Yes. Gentlemen, thank you, Ben. As y'all know, I work part-time for a funeral home, and I have worked several services at Fairfield United Methodist Church. I've never seen a bigger crowd than what was there for his service the other day, so it speaks well to him. I know some former friends there real close to him that have really been upset over his passing, but that will create an opening on our Planning and Zoning Board. Is there any other questions or an issue? I do want to read this proclamation, Item E under that consent agenda is the proclamation, Commissioner Haywood referenced this a while ago, recognizing November as Adoption Awareness Month. This resolution reads, whereas November is celebrated nationally as Adoption Awareness Month to express the right of every child to grow up in a permanent, secure, and loving family, and whereas the adoptive experience provides the foundation for a happy, productive adulthood, and whereas the Randolph County Department of Social Services serves more than 200 children in substitute care who live apart from their birth families, and adoption is the permanent plan for 36 of these children. And whereas Randolph County actively promotes the timely adoption of these children and has finalized 38 adoptions since July the 1st of 2020, some of whom have special needs. And whereas children are waiting for adoptive families and those families who have adopted these children require and deserve community support, now therefore be it proclaimed that the Randolph County Board of Commissioners recognizes November 2021 as Adoption Awareness Month in our county, and we urge our citizens to recognize and support this observance. This is adopted the first day of November 2021. So any other item here, or I have a motion on the consent agenda?
Move it,
Mr. Chairman, as you read that, and since I'm on the Department of Social Services Board, I'd like to make the motion that we adopt the consent agenda with that, all right, that proclamation in it.
Second.
David, I accept.
Second, yeah.
All right, further discussion? Those in favor will say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. Consent agenda is approved. Dr. Cagle, I don't think she's here tonight from Cohn Hospital. The reason she was on the agenda, I have met with her. She's the new president and CEO of Cohn Hospital. And those of you that have been following the process of the sale of our hospital, Randolph Hospital, you know that Cohn was, at one time, was to be a part of that, actually to have a hospital in Randolph County. But in the settlement, in the sale of Randolph Hospital, Cohn owned 40% of the cancer center. And in the bankruptcy settlement, Cohn is required to build a new standalone cancer center in Randolph County. Commissioner Allen and I met a couple of weeks ago with Dr. Cagle and Pat Hurley and Alan McNeil. Senator Craven had to get back to Raleigh, but she came, and the intent, and we still might put her next month, was to say publicly, Cohn has budgeted to spend $60 million to build a new cancer center in Randolph County. So that's going to be a big issue and a very positive for our county. It has to be built within 10 miles of the current hospital, the current site. So that puts it on the north side of Randleman, pretty much. It's about 10 miles from downtown Asheboro. So that was the reason she was here tonight. And I do want to tell you, and I think David would agree, she's not at all like the past management administration that we had to deal with at Cohn Hospital. She's been a breath of fresh air and is very sincere in her willingness and her intent to deal professionally and respectfully with Randolph County in this process, and they look forward to having this facility here. David, you want to?
Daryl, would you take just a minute and tell anybody who might be listening, I know we've said multiple times, but I'm sure they probably don't remember it, why the cancer center has moved to a different location for now?
The real issue has to do with prescription discounts for patients on Medicaid, Medicare. And the fact that the cancer center, the current cancer center, is attached to now a for-profit hospital, they were going to lose that discount. And it would have cost the hospital or the cancer center literally millions of dollars. If the cancer center, this is how crazy the structure is on the certificate of need. If the cancer center would have been 31 feet from Randolph Hospital, it would not be an issue. But it was attached by pass-through. And there was some give and take. Both owned had some ownership in Staywell. It's all been ironed out. Randolph, the new owners, American Healthcare Systems, owns all of Staywell now, and Cohn Hospital has to build. The new owners paid them for their hospital. Cohn has to build a new standalone cancer center in Randolph County. So this has all been playing out over the last 3 years as we've been dealing with trying to save Randolph Hospital. And the county, as you know, had to borrow $12 million to the benefit of the new owners. We have advanced $3 million of that. And we will, once we get the money from the state, we'll put that back in our pockets. And we will still have $9 million available for them as long as they carry out their requirements under the bankruptcy agreement. So thank you, Hope. Does anybody have a question?
What's 10 miles?
That was just, it was what I got. And I was on the phone on and off, and I called Commissioner Allen a couple of times during that day, back and forth in bankruptcy court in Raleigh. And that's what the whole issue was how to settle the ownership of the cancer center between the new owner and Cohn Hospital. And they had all of these agreements, and they came down to where the last issue was, where does it have to be built? And the bankruptcy judge about 4:15 in the afternoon said, we've ironed all this out. We're not going to sit here and argue over how far or how close it needs to be. We were wanting like 5 miles. They said 10 miles and wrapped the gavel and closed the case, pretty much. That was the last issue, and it was not going to undo everything they'd worked to solve that day, because that was not an easy process. Thank you.
But the commissioners wanted it a little closer.
Yes, we wanted it closer.
We advocated for that.
But again, I think it is I think, the long-term benefit of our county to have a better relationship with Cohn, because that was not good. It was not good for several reasons, and we met with their administration, and we asked, and we offered the $12 million to their benefit. But I think at that time, Cohn was in negotiations for another merger, which since has fallen through. But that's a part of the process. All right. Our next item, I've asked Commissioner Allen. He's been very involved with our state association. Our past president has had a food insecurity. That was his project during his term as president. And Commissioner Allen served on that board. He's still involved with it. Kenny back here with Cooperative Extension has been involved in that process some. So I'm going to ask David if he will have some comments and maybe introduce this item for you tonight.
Be happy to, Chairman. If y'all want to come up, come and see us tonight is Jennifer Bedrosian with the Piedmont Triad Regional Council, and Tom Hensley, who is the co-owner of Back to Earth Farm here in Randolph County, represents Randolph County along with myself on the Piedmont Triad Regional Food Council. I guess I kind of got involved in this when Jennifer came and made a presentation to the Piedmont Triad Regional Development Corporation.
Yep.
And they were needing some volunteers to serve on the council, so I volunteered. And that was about a year ago. And I think the food assessment was in process at that point in time. And so I got the pleasure of getting in on the tail end of it and getting the results and not having to do a lot of the work. But I have been involved with the North Carolina Association of County Commissioners in their presidential initiative, and it was amazing the correlation and the dovetailing of the two reports that went together. A lot of the same recommendations were in both reports. So tonight, I think probably already done 5 counties. One of the things that the council want to do is to share this assessment with the community, and by doing that, travel to Davie County, Davidson County, Guilford County, Surrey County. I think Forsyth has been scheduled, and so come to us to present the findings of the regional food assessment, and because this is something that kind of, I guess, became more important to a lot of folks during the pandemic when we've had supply shortages, and you go in the grocery store and there's empty shelves. It may be certain types of foods or whatnot, but it became, had more importance maybe than what we've shown it in the past. So I'm going to ask Jennifer and Tom to share with us tonight. It's nice being on this side of the desk here rather than on that side and having to share. So we look forward to it. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Allen, and we have appreciated your support as we've delivered these presentations. It's been extremely helpful. Do I push next, or do I say next slide?
Down here.
Gotcha. Thank you. So thank you so much. That was a wonderful introduction to what we're here for tonight, which is, as Commissioner Allen mentioned, to present the findings of our regional food system assessment. So this was over a year-long process throughout 2019 and 2020, which included data collection and community engagement for all 12 counties of the Piedmont Triad. Again, my name is Jennifer Bedrosian, and I am the Food Systems Coordinator at Piedmont Triad Regional Council. This work, we want to acknowledge that this work is currently funded through Blue Cross Blue Shield Foundation of North Carolina, and we worked with Carolina Creative Works, which is a consulting group in North Carolina, to help us with this data collection process. This is what the online, so we produced two documents, two products out of the assessment. One is a 130-plus page report, which you can download from our website, and the other is this interactive online report. So what you see here is the first page of the interactive online report. It's kind of the home page there. That's what it looks like. And we have research buckets there at the bottom, some tabs where you can scroll to a particular section. Starting this process, we used this, the Food Council adopted this definition of equity to use as a framework for how we approached the data collection and the community engagement. I'm not going to read things out loud to you because I know we have a limited amount of time here. So, but we do wanted to let you know this was the definition that we used. A couple of interesting aspects about this online assessment are that there are some video elements here where you can hear directly from the folks who conducted the research with Carolina Creative Works. And we also had a partnership with Second Harvest Food Bank, which we'll get to in a little bit more depth. We were able to produce some more granular level data by zip code. So what you see here is a heat map. This is the Triad. So this is a heat map organized by zip code, and we'll talk a little bit more about this moving forward. And finally, we produced, each county has an online county profile, which can be downloaded. It looks like this is Randolph County's, where it takes all of this information that we learned about and what we're going to talk about tonight and kind of compiles it down to specific to the county. These are the 5 research buckets we're going to talk to you about tonight, and this is, again, going to be a very high-level overview, but we would love for you to take a look at more in depth to the assessment, the online report as well. And I'm going to turn it over here to Tom.
Yes.
And I've got my timer going.
All right. Yes, thanks. And obviously, any of these topics, we could speak for hours, but we're not going to put you through that. So we're going to try to go real fast through this, so hopefully not too fast. But when we talk about food security, it's always interesting to me. The first thing you would talk about food security is actually food insecurity. It's the state of being where one doesn't have enough food and affordable, nutritious food at a household level. And if I may even dovetail on Commissioner Allen, as he was saying, it goes further than that. It's also the grocery stores, it's the restaurants, it's how do we have security within just not your individual home, but within your county, your state, and your country. And so a lot of this stuff is covered in here. Also, it goes into and breaking it down by color, by community. Well, people of color are going to be twice as likely to have food insecurity. So this cuts all the way through. Obviously, COVID's been a huge deal for somebody who sells grass-fed beef direct retail. It's been a huge positive, but that doesn't mean that that's a good thing on this, but just to give you an idea of what's been going on. Oh, right one, okay. So this is, the numbers in this study were based off of 2017, I believe, and they think that those numbers have now changed by 1.5 to 3 times. So in Randolph County, the food insecurity level of 12% would now be roughly 18 to 36%, just to give you an idea of how high that rate is. So that's a very meaningful number. And then where or why is this data different? Where did it come from? This is actually then the ability that Jennifer was talking about to partner with Second Harvest Food Bank. And so they've been able to dig deeper and go into additional information at a zip code level as to who's impacted, who needs this. And I think we've all seen on the news that even big cities are having drive-through food banks, that this was a big deal added to by the, oh yeah, thank you. There's actually zip codes here. So you can look at that and then also check that by different communities. I have to take off my glasses. Unfortunately, I can't read my own handwriting. But also involved in this is the ability to go deeper and check this out by all sorts of different levels, not only by veterans, male, female, age. There's all sorts of information that you're going to be able to dig down in this thing. Food security. So what are potential ways that we can then address this? So greater collaboration, all of these small grants, things like this, is that there is money now coming in and trying to get something to change, and change it at a level of, in my case, I look at it more from the farmer. How does the farmer actually connect with the consumer? That right now, it's not easy to do. In fact, it's almost impossible to do. If you either play the commodities game or you are on the other side and you sell direct, and even it's just very inefficient. And how do we slay that is where I think we gain food security at every level, not just the household, but the community, and even larger than that. Okay. And yeah, so that's it. Just lots of opportunities. You know, we hear the hospital wants to do this, the school will want to do this, the farm, the food banks, all of these things. These are all great opportunities, but actually making that happen, that's the devil in the details here. And so that's what we're all looking at. How do we then approach this?
So this is still a work in process.
Well, we are finished with our initial assessment, but this gives what we learned through that process and then some recommendations for how counties can move forward with that information and continue some of the engagement and input from the community.
Right.
Could I ask a question?
Of course, yeah.
If you don't mind.
Sure.
The number of acres operated by county, I found this fascinating. I know you've got a slide somewhere.
It's coming.
Yeah, it's coming. And maybe I've jumped ahead a little bit. I'm sorry.
You have, but that's not unusual.
I'm glad you looked at it.
But I noticed, I've got it on the iPad here, but on the acreage, I found it interesting that Randolph was a close second to Surrey County. That was the heaviest county operated, yet a place like Davidson, which I would have thought would have had a lot more acreage compared to Randolph, is not, and Montgomery's way down there at the very bottom. I guess my question is, what acreage would have included, like farms that was cultivating certain crops or pasture type crops? I mean, what did you include in your acres of operation?
Well, I think we can probably just jump right into this section then, because we're going to talk about it a little bit, so it's a good segue. And yeah, as you can see here, I'll let Tom's...
The USDA.
Ags,
right.
yeah.
So the USDA in 2017 had put together this information. So it's just basically pulled out of how they did it. I don't know that. I just tell you that that's their conclusion, that this is the number of acres by county in the Piedmont.
Right.
And then
I just found it interesting that Randolph's about 150,000 acres, while Montgomery, which is not far, it's right at the borders, is 33,500. So.
yeah, and I don't know if it has to get in with who's registered with the USDA or not, or how they actually transfer that.
I don't know that much about Montgomery, but I would guess the amount of farmland there simply may not be as much because there's a lot of forestry probably.
Yeah,
that would not be included.
Peach groves and things like that. Would that?
That would be included, I'm sure.
And you got a lot of lakes, water.
So I wasn't surprised that Randolph was second, Surrey being first, but and Davidson too, because you got a lot of encroachment coming down from Winston-Salem, High Point into Davidson
yeah, you're
County.
right, the northern part of the
That's
county.
taken a lot of the farmland there.
It's just amazing to look at these statistics here and see the differences.
Does this include the acreage in the voluntary ag districts? Is that all one number?
Yep. Yes, so I'll just continue on. We can skip Jennifer's part and we'll just keep them with me. Thank you, Maxton. Yeah. So then it gets into, I found this interesting, is what types of crops are then produced. And so the difference between a crop and a commodity product. Commodities are considered the non-edibles. That's going to be more of your corn and soybean that are going to be feed type products. The crop products may be more of your vegetables and things like that. Also then animal production, and you go down there and you see that Randolph is the leader in animal production. So a lot of people raising all the different types of livestock. So I think that that's interesting, though, is that with all of this stuff being produced in Randolph County, the part that I'm getting more concerned is that maybe the crop production sales is still a little low in that area, further not addressing the food insecurity issue. So the notable trend here is that since livestock plays such a big role, how do we then get processed? In my case, that last year in 2020, by May, all the processing dates in both at Piedmont Custom Meats, down in Key Packing, they're probably not in the Piedmont, but they're close by, were all taken. So everything had been changed. So the increase of doing that, and that also the big problems with all the huge plants starting to have issues, they started moving to our small plants. I'll say our small plants because that's who producers like me would use, became a real issue. So money and the increase going there as they've increased their size has been very significant. It's just now turning around. So it started in May of 2020, and now it's November, and it's just now getting to where that bottleneck is what I would call manageable, but it's still a bottleneck. So it's an area that could be reduced. Also, I think what was interesting in this is the number of farms that have been lost, 60% of that, and that number was from 2012 to 2017, which is a fairly huge drop in the number of farms. And what's going on, people just getting out. I started farming 8 years ago, so city attorney who thought this would be a good idea, or not city attorney, but an attorney in a city. Let's clarify that. Thought that would be a good idea, and I can tell you it's hard work. So.
Well, on that middle statistic, you know, there's a minimum dollar value in 10 acres to qualify for current use values, or what people typically call farm deferred.
Yes.
So I would think that leads to some of that math right there.
Definitely. And also the difference in size is when we looked at the other chart and talked about the crops, the commodity farmers were the biggest sales in this county, and commodity is a pure economics of scale issue. Right. The more acres you have, the better. You want to plow as many as you can and plant as much as you can. That's different than what I'm doing and what other edible crop people are doing. So. You want to take this?
Okay. So yeah, we'll just kind of, we don't have much time left, but we'll try to move through these so you can at least get an overview. This is just continuing with farm and food production. We did take a look at the makeup of who farms and who owns land, principal farmers, and which are farm owners are 97% of principal farm operators in the latest ag census identified as white. And then we also see the principal farm operator by gender, so broken down male and female. It's not congruent with the makeup of our population and who owns farmland and who is farming the farmland. So just to note that. So how can we use this data to impact the region? Tom we talked about meat processing and building long-lasting resistance in meat processing facilities, incentives for small producers we touched on just a little bit, and then ways to protect farmland and providing innovative ways for new farmers to access land. We've got all this land loss, and how can we get people who want to farm, particularly people who haven't had access to be able to do that. Well, do you want me to keep going?
Just keep going.
Okay. Supply chains, so 67% of food consumed in the Triad is imported from outside of the region. So in Randolph County, numbers didn't reach, what stays in the county didn't reach measurable levels. So there are opportunities for more food that's grown in Randolph County to stay in Randolph County, and more opportunities for food grown in Randolph County to stay in our region. We list here supply chain leakage, which is kind of the import and export deficit, and that's kind of what we're talking about. We go into a little bit more detail in the full report. And some other ways that we can help do that are to invest in infrastructure, which was also echoed in the county commissioner's report. There is a lot of access to, there is cold storage in our region. However, much of it is designated for medical use as opposed to ag use. So sometimes there are smaller organizations that want to apply for programs like the USDA Food Box program during the pandemic, and they literally couldn't because they didn't have anywhere. They couldn't qualify. They didn't have anywhere for that to go. Food banks sometimes didn't have enough cold storage. We've seen that echoed quite a bit. Obviously, this is a viable industry. We know that food supply chains bring in over $28 billion in annual sales. This is to our region. You can look at the graph here and see this broken down by county, and this is by business in the county. So we learned, again, that there are gaps in the intermediary market, so the opportunities where small farmers want to scale up, maybe from their local farmers market to selling to a grocery store or to collaborating with other farmers in a food co-op or ag center, institutional purchasing. We know that there are opportunities to help those smaller farmers on those small farms to get to the next level if they want to. We know that restaurants were hit particularly hard during the pandemic. Many restaurants are in danger of closing across the state. And then again, the cold storage needs across the region. So sort of what can we do about this? More coordinated support, like I said, like I mentioned, opportunities for institutional purchasing and investing in infrastructure, which was mentioned. And the graphic here, you can kind of see also would include things like broadband and as well as education for new farmer training and educational opportunities. We have some other counties that are working with Stokes County, for example, is working with Forsyth Tech to build a meat cutting program for a butchery and meat processor there. So lots of opportunities to continue working and hear what the county needs here are. I know I've taken a little bit too much time, but I just want to walk you through the last few slides here. If you're wondering kind of what next steps the council is taking, we have 3 action items listed here, one of which partner presentations, which we're doing now. As Commissioner Allen mentioned, we've been going out to boards of commissioners meetings and presenting this information in hopes that it will be helpful as you start to think about decisions within the county. We've also been to Wake Forest University and NC State University to give some talks, as well as WellCare, the managed care piece of WellCare. We just gave a talk there as well. Additionally, council to community listening sessions. So moving into the next year, we want to come back out into the counties and continue this work and hear from people in the county about what they want and where they see this information being useful. And then finally, we started this last year a small micro grant opportunity through something called shared gifting, which will be little mini grants that we're offering to different community organizations as sort of seed money and community building to help fund small projects. And we will be offering that to all counties in this coming year. Oops. These are our current Food Council members. Our goal is to have representation from all 12 counties in the Triad. Some people are going to be rolling off this year and in December, and then we'll be onboarding some new folks in January. So we'll be adding a couple counties. We still have a gap in Davie County. Our person here will be rolling off Yadkin County and Montgomery County. So if you know anybody who's interested, send them my way. Here is the interactive online report, the link to that report. This is my name and email. Please reach out if you have any questions. And we encourage you to take a look at the online report if you haven't done so yet. So thank you so much for your time today, and we'll open it up if there are any more questions. We would be happy to answer those.
I'll just repeat for Dr. Shackford back there that, community college president here in Randolph, that up in Stokes County, Carl Mitchell, who's on the food council as a meat cutter, he can't find people to work in his business, so he went to community college to Forsyth Tech, I guess, to get folks to be able to work in his business. And so that's one of the things I know the state's been stressing, Steve Trottler, is the processing piece. We raise a lot of things here in Randolph County, but there's not a lot of processing, and so that's an opportunity for economic growth. The other thing that really wasn't mentioned in either report, but I think Kenny Sharon would help me back me up, is that the age of the average farmer is, I think, was 58. I'm 58. I'm getting too old to do any farming, so that's a big concern as well. Small farmers, especially, you saw I think 85% of the farmers are small farmers, and so providing markets for those folks, especially here in Randolph County, to be able to allow them to increase their market rather than just going to the local, and we have good local farmers markets, but to be able to reach that next step to sell to grocery stores, other institutions, is very important. So that's something that the counties can possibly help with, to provide support for those folks through cold storage and other infrastructure. There's been a couple counties that are allowing food banks and what to use their facilities that they already have on hand in a coordinated effort with partnershiping with those folks. So there's a lot of opportunities here for the counties to get involved, to provide these type services, because this is not going to go away anytime soon. It's going to be with us for a pretty good while. So I appreciate y'all coming tonight, and I think it was very, very helpful. Hopefully, we've got some ARP money and I've talked to every commissioners I've been to. I say, remember, you got the ARP money if you want to use that for something related to food insecurity and food systems. So, I think we've got a couple things on our docket for that too.
Yeah, I would just, if I have one quick minute, to just throw into that, to expect the farmer to be able to both farm, market, sell, deliver is just not efficient in our world. So that's why we're trying to figure out how we can use what the county can do to help bridge those sorts of gaps.
And I know with the community college, the agribusiness curriculum, that you may be a good farmer, but you may not be a very good businessman. And I know that we had one of the pathways was ag, to be able to help farmers who love to farm. That's what they do. But it's more than just that. You got to be able to market your product. You got to be able to go to the bank to borrow money. Those types of things that are not intuitive to somebody that's a farmer.
Right.
Necessarily. Now they're good farmers, good businessmen, but you got to be both.
Right. And the way to actually make more money is to be selling direct as opposed to into the commodity system. The higher quality going to the people who demand it. But that is not easy. So.
Tom, nice to meet you and have you. You know, you're one of our county folks. With Jennifer, I've heard her presentations before, the Development Corporation, and she's building quite a reputation around our Triad region, so that's a good thing. And I think we share this with, I guess Kenny's already got a copy of this. Do you have one, Kenny? To see how we can use the data to make some improvements in Randolph County.
I think this was originally rolled out maybe in April originally. I think Kenny may have been in on that section. So tried to include Ag Extension is another partner that can be used to facilitate some of this work too.
I was reading an article just yesterday, as a matter of fact, about NC State and all the things they were doing with agribusiness and this, that, and the other, and talking about how the products in North Carolina have changed from tobacco going into sweet potatoes, and now more and more pork, Tom, not cattle, not beef cattle, but more and more pork, and the fact that their markets are now Japan and China, that they're really going into immensely. And I was a little bit, I got to say, a little bit surprised by that way that it's moving. You'd think it'd be a lot more, since Randolph County is very oriented cow-wise, that's the way they are. But they're looking at where they're marketing to and how they're marketing and the product they're marketing. It's now sweet potatoes and pork, which is, I just found that fascinating. Here's what they're doing, but sweet potatoes, I think, is the new charm child of the world or something like that. So North Carolina soils, especially the eastern part of the state, I don't know that Randolph County has a soil structure necessarily for sweet potatoes, but the eastern part of the state being more sandy soil, they produce a lot of sweet potatoes and are planning to accelerate that. So that's interesting.
All right.
Well,
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Carry on. Okay, our Courthouse Museum feasibility study. Ross?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and Commissioners. I'm glad to be here to report on progress toward the creation of a Randolph County History Museum on the first floor of this building. The preliminary design and cost estimate study is complete, and we are at a decision point summed up in a quote from the famous Will Massey. You started out to do a museum and ended up renovating the historic courthouse. Do we have the PowerPoint? I use such heavy graphics, I'm not surprised. What we have found is that placing a museum on the first floor here is quite feasible and in and of itself not all that costly. But the building has some overall needs that for both its current use and potential uses that require some attention. You'll recall this is a two-pronged project to find a new, larger home for the Randolph Room and to establish a long-desired county history museum that can tell Randolph County's unique story, which lately has become a pressing need. The Randolph Room part is on hold while we await word on a potential space that would be very desirable if it becomes available. Meanwhile, we've forged ahead with planning for the History Museum. We're working with Hobbs Architects of Pittsboro. Hobbs is a perfect fit for our project, having guided the reconstruction of the Chatham County Courthouse after that devastating fire in 2010 and having redeveloped it into a local history museum. And Hobbs also oversaw the restoration work at Fort Macon State Historic Site and designed the fort's new Visitor Education Center and exhibit pavilion. Here tonight are, they moved, Siobhan Moore and Grimsley Hobbs, who have taken point on our project with Paxton and me. For the museum study, Hobbs was charged with developing a plan that reconfigures the first floor as minimally as possible to create a history museum, improves accessibility to and egress from the building, maximizes exhibit space, but also incorporates some space for staff, upgrades existing engineering systems to provide air conditioning and humidity control necessary for museum exhibits. Hobbs has completed the study and has determined that the first floor is well suited for use as a history museum, a county history museum. You'll recall that the downstairs offers us 3 large 3-room suites totaling about 2,000 square feet of potential exhibit space. The study included an assessment of the cost of installing exhibits, including research and development, exhibit design and writing, and fabrication and installation. Here on the left, you see an example of what an explanatory panel unique to Randolph County might look like, and some exhibit examples down below from the Chatham County Museum. The good news is that the cost of placing the museum exhibits on the first floor is in the $300,000 range, about what we expected. The other news is that this building has some needs that transcend its use as a museum and may even have an impact on its continued use as your meeting space and or some future use. These primarily concern Americans with Disability Act compliance, code requirements related to egress if we begin to renovate, water intrusion and damage in the basement, and a new HVAC system for the basement and first floor. In terms of ADA, it once was assumed that a reasonable accommodation, such as our exterior lift and ancient elevator, was sufficient to be compliant, but we have since learned that that's, as some other local governments have found out to their multi-million-dollar dismay, that a disabled person must have the same access to a government building that a fully abled person has without having to ask for assistance or special accommodation, if it's reasonably possible. We were operating under Title III of the ADA, which covers commercial buildings, but we're actually governed by Title II, which covers government buildings and holds us to a higher standard. And beyond just complying, there's the philosophical principle that citizens have the right to petition their government and ought to have effective access to do that. The proposed solution is the addition of an elevator tower to the east side of the building that provides access to all floors from the handicap parking area. The elevator tower will include a lobby, so the elevator doors will not open directly onto this floor or the hallways below. The entry door would be right over here. There will be a door from the elevator lobby into the interior of the building. An elevator was considered during the previous renovation in 2008, but it was understood at the time that the exterior lift and existing elevator would make us compliant. We now know that's not the case. Another area of concern that Hobbs identified involved the staircases. Neither the front nor the back stairs are smoke rated and enclosed, which is a code requirement that a renovation would have to meet. That's easily enough accomplished, but Hobbs also recommends, for further safety, replacing the narrow, inadequate back stair and old elevator with a fire-rated enclosed staircase. Oddly enough, it makes the building more original, as there was a full rear staircase until installation of the elevator in the mid-20th century. Fortunately, the currently permitted A3 assembly occupancy will not change with the addition of the museum spaces, eliminating the need for significant, more costly structural and fire rating adjustments. Another major item is an HVAC system for the basement and first floor. It was a surprise to me that the first floor is cooled by window units, and that's not an effective level of climate control when you think about, precious historic artifacts. Hobbs is proposing to replace the existing window units and steam heating with a variable refrigerant flow system that includes a condenser unit outside and a piping system in the basement that serves the first floor with floor-mounted units and the basement with wall-mounted units. And speaking of the basement, although it was thought to be watertight after the 2008 renovation, there has been water intrusion over time that has caused damage. Hobbs is recommending that water-damaged areas be repaired and any ongoing intrusion remediated. Storage is going to be a critical need for the museum, and the basement is the only place that provides it. We want to ensure that it's usable. We already have Randolph Room books and documents stored down there now in a room with a weak window unit air conditioner, and mildew is a real problem. Taking all this into account, the construction cost is estimated at $1,962,984. The elevator tower makes up about 40% of that cost, HVAC 25%, and the fire-rated stair about 10%. Add the contingency, escalation, design fees, and the $300,000 exhibit estimate, and the total comes to $2,836,321. The estimate is conservative, meaning that it's on the high side, It considers current uncertainty in the construction industry, which might be settled by the time construction takes place, resulting in a lower cost. There also may be reductions based on further code review of code requirements. The next step, if you wish to proceed with the museum project and the overall improvements to the building, is to authorize the architects to begin the design phase at an immediate cost of $198,600. Will has provided you with the capital project ordinance in your packets. Design work and bidding is expected to take about 11 months, and the construction about a further 12 months. Thank you, and if you have questions, we've got the group here that can answer them.
How much we have to tear out? Part of this was.
Do you want to? This is Siobhan Moore from Hobbs Architects.
Hello, good evening. I'm Siobhan Moore with Hobbs Architects. And your question was, how much would we have to tear out? That was the question. Actually, very minimal amount on the first floor. The building's in really good shape on this floor and downstairs. Our task was to minimize the amount of disruption to the building, minimize the amount that had to be taken out of the building. So truly the demolition that we thought would be necessary was anything that would be needed to repair the water damage in the basement. There are some hazardous materials that still need to be taken out of the basement level, some on the first floor, but limited on the first floor. And then what would be needed to actually very minimally demolish, selectively demolish what's needed on this facade to add an elevator tower. But the chunk of the demolition would actually apply to that rear stair.
But
so taking that out and putting in a new stair.
You'll have to make room for a bigger elevator.
Well, the bigger elevator would be in the addition, would be out here.
So none of the demolition is related to the elevator?
It's taking out the existing elevator, yes. So that would come out.
Okay.
And the existing stair would be replaced with a code, a stair that actually meets current code in its width. And it would be enclosed, so it would be fire rated. Yes.
You know, I know that the ask for us tonight is to approve the design contract. Do you have some idea about a timeline?
Yes, 11 months for design and...
How much?
11 months, design, bidding, that kind of thing, and then a further 12 months for the construction.
For the actual work?
Yeah, so 2 years.
On the remediation of the water issues, evidently thought that was taken care of before. What's the scale? What can be done? How comfortable can we be that it'll be an area which you could store artifacts without fear of any kind of humidity, water damage, mildew, that kind of thing?
Yes, that was one of our primary tasks, was to look into what could we do to help with that. And so the building has some adjacencies with the building to the west that would make complete remediation of that very difficult, because what we propose to do is actually protect the outside of the wall with a below-grade waterproofing membrane, and we can only access that in probably about 80% of the perimeter of the building. So, and those are really the areas along the sides and the front of the building where we have access to grade, and we wouldn't be taking out stairways to be able to do that. So in those areas, those would be the areas that we'd recommend utilizing for storage. The new HVAC system would be one that would help to mitigate humidity. That would be a primary goal of that system, so that the spaces would be much more suited to storing those
So basically
materials.
better HVAC and then repairing whatever you, sealing whatever you can in the foundation.
Yes,
So
yes.
that would mean digging down beside the outside or inside, I guess.
It would be outside. That's the best place to do it. We could also, in some areas, put an interior coating on, might be another way to help mitigate that where we can't access the exterior. But there are a number of areas in the basement that are suffering from water damage, and really just trying to get that out, get it back to a clean, fresh slate for you all is part of what we propose.
We have that, Paxton, we have that 2008 asbestos survey. Is that still good? Is that still good information?
Most of that has already been abated whenever we did the renovation.
Yep.
However, we were on a bit of a budget at that time, so like areas down in the basement that we were not being disturbed, we just left it in place.
So we probably still have some down there.
Yeah, mainly in the basement. There's like floor tile. There may be some on the first floor that just wasn't disturbed that was left in place, but mostly down the basement. That would probably be one of the first things we do is to go in and abate the remaining asbestos and uncover some things down there for the engineers to have a better look of what's there.
All right. Other questions? All right. Any other questions? All right. The ask of us is to approve the $198,600 architectural design phase for Hobbs Architects, PA of Pittsburgh.
I move we approve the resolution or the motion there, just as you stated.
All right. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you. Further discussion. Will, are you going to set up a fund or just a straight?
Well, what you have before you is the project ordinance, and all it has in there is the amount to cover this contract. We'll add proposal later on when we have a better feel for the cost. But the manager and I have talked about making that a pay-as-you-go project.
All right.
Is this motion also approving that project ordinance?
Well, certainly.
Thank you.
All right. Any other questions or comments? Those in favor of the motion will say aye. Aye. Opposed, no. And it's approved.
Thank you very
all of
much.
you. Look forward to going forward with this. Thank you very much. Okay. Next is our detention center update. Paxton. Let me say, I know Philip Cheek is here with us tonight because this affects his job on a daily basis, and those others at the jail. But I want to say how appreciative we are of Philip and his team working diligently through the pandemic for the last soon-to-be 2 years. They've done a yeoman's job under some extremely difficult situations and exposures that they didn't create, but it was brought to them. So, and he always had answers. Every day he had answers and knew where we were going and what we were doing. And I thank all of his team for getting us through that. And we're not through it yet, but we've come a long ways. And I wanted to say that tonight.
And they've also been a big help to me with the construction project, so very good to have. So, good evening, Chairman and Commissioners. Here to ask the request for a change order for the detention center project, but first I wanted to give a quick update on the renovation work. Here's just the footprint of the facility. To your left, you'll have Area A. This includes the booking area, magistrate, kitchen, laundry, and administrative offices. In the center upper area, you have D pod and F pod. In the center lower, you have E pod and G pod. And to the right, you've got the addition which we finished up back in the spring. So here right now, we're in phase 2. And the areas that you see in green are the areas that are currently occupied. Those in yellow are those that are under construction. So you can see right now we're renovating D pod and F pod there at the top, and down below we are starting to finish up renovating E pod, turning it into a temporary booking and magistrate. state inspection is scheduled for November 18th. So if all goes well, we will then move into phase 3. And at that time, we will turn over, we will take back EPOD to use as a temporary booking and magistrate and turn over GPOD so they can start renovating there. We'll also turn over the Area A, however, not all of it. The detention center was working with the local prison to do food service and laundry. However, when the COVID numbers started going back up, that sort of fell through. So they then had to reach out to private vendors, which has caused it to take a little bit longer. But Bordeaux Construction is working with us, and they're going to let us continue using the kitchen and laundry through the end of the year. So at that point, we will pretty much turn over all of the Area A except for administrative offices and some medical area. They'll also begin addition to the booking area, and at some point we'll start the construction of the maintenance building. D, F, and G pods will finish up sooner. As they become available, they'll turn those over to the county for occupancy. However, the Area A will take pretty much the whole time for phase 3. Once that is done, they'll then go into phase 4, where the contractor goes back into EPOD and undoes the work that was done as a temporary magistrate and turns it sort of back into housing area. So that's pretty much it for the update. Are there any questions before I move on to the request?
So we got another year. Is that?
Yeah.
That's going to wrap it up.
Yeah. Right now, that phase 4 is looking to take 3 months from September to November. And if everything goes on schedule, we'll be wrapping it up in a little over a year from now.
So does that mean we got to start all over again since it's been so long since we started?
I hope not. Yeah.
It just seems like it's been a long time.
It does.
Like
it has.
It's been forever.
That's just part of doing work in an occupied building. We're doing the same thing over at the courthouse.
It's more than just an occupied building. They're there 24/7.
Exactly. Yeah, this is even worse. But
At that point in time, it would occupy, or would be able to occupy how many prisoners?
410.
I don't remember the number now.
410.
it's about double what we have now. It was just over 410.
It's what?
420? 422. Okay, I'll hold you to that too then.
So, but being an occupied building, things can still happen.
Yes.
And this is reshuffling existing money, basically.
Well, I haven't gotten to the request yet, but when I do, yes, that is money that is already in the project, and it's basically dedicated for the detention center. We either spend it on additional items or we pay down debt, one or the other. It's a good. I'll move on into the request at that. These are basically things that were not picked up in the original design. However, they've been discovered as we started renovation, and they are life safety and health related, and the jail staff would like to go ahead and address them while they have the opportunity. The first 3 are life safety items, and the last 2 are health related. The first one, that is the replacement of the existing lights in inmate areas that are not detention grade. Basically, EPOD and GPOD have just regular commercial lights in them. I'm not sure really how they ever got approved because they're really not that far above the ground. An inmate could access them, and you take out a 4-foot glass tube, which could be used as a weapon, which is definitely not something we would like to address it and correct it if we can. Next item is lights in the cells having nightlight features. Every hour, officer has to make rounds and check on every inmate, and that works good during the day when there's light, but at nighttime the cells are pitch black. So they have to shine a light into the cell, which disturbs the inmate. It's also hard with the glass and the glare to actually see that well. So they would like to replace these lights with lights that have a nightlight feature on them. That way there's just enough light that they can look through the window, see if the person's sleeping or if they may need some assistance.
So there's always some light there.
Yeah, there'll always be just a very small glow that will be just lighted up enough that they can see if the person's, sleeping in the bed or where they are in the cell, whereas right now it's just pitch black. The third item, that is the glazing and G-pod at the rec yards. We have the same type frames and glazing in D and F pods. However, those got picked up in the design and are part of the project. For whatever reason, G-pod sort of fell through the cracks and did not get caught. However, they're just basically non-detention frames and glass, and they would really like to replace them now while they have the chance. The last two are more of the health items. The first is sneeze guards. Of course, whenever this project was being designed, COVID was not a thing, so there was no precautions taken against COVID. They would like to add sneeze guards for the officer stations. However, because it's the detention center, just a regular sneeze guard won't do. They need very rigid structural frames with detention glazing in them, which comes at a lot bigger price tag, but it'll provide some additional help for the staff, for the officer. Last item is air ionization units for N and E pods. This is a recommendation from the health department. Right now, the cells have a central air where all the air is shared, it's recirculated. And so by putting these air ionization units, it would treat the air and provide better protection for not just COVID, but any infectious disease.
Is that going to go to some of the other pods also later on, or?
It could. There was only $20,000 for two pods. It was like $10,000 each. So at some point they could look at doing other units. But we wanted to start for now just with doing the N pod and E pod, one for the males and one for the females.
All right. Questions? All right.
All right, well, I'll go ahead and make my request then. It's a three-part request. One is that you award a change order to the contract with Bordeaux Construction to add $334,927 to the owner contingency allowance, and that you authorize the county manager to sign. Also, that you add $20,000 to the project budget for the purchase of the air ionization units, and finally, that you approve an associated budget adjustment. I'll be glad to answer any questions.
Will, do you want to explain the math?
When we started this project, we estimated a certain amount of interest income and sales tax refunds on the project, and it's come in stronger than that. So it is tied to this project. The IRS would want that interest used to the project, and then the trustees will want the sales tax refunds to be used. So it's available for this project, and so we can, without borrowing any more money. These are revenues that are already in hand through this stage of the project.
So it's not, I guess when I read the amendment, I was a little confused on, is this new money, old money, or is this more additional money?
That's what I was wanting to say.
This is money earned beyond what is in the current project budget. So we can add project costs such as this amendment.
The revenue's there from these various sources. It doesn't require us to put more or additional money from outside.
That's correct.
Basically, sales tax that was spent for this project is being recycled back.
That's correct.
For example, okay.
That's pretty good earnings on interest, too.
For a while, it's dropped off quite a bit.
Yeah. 136,000. All right. Any other questions? Okay, then the ask of our board is to approve the project amendment for the detention center and allow the county manager to sign the contract and approve this associated budget amendment that's in our information tonight.
I'll make that motion.
Thank you. Do I have a second?
Second.
Motion and a second. Everybody understand the motion? Questions or discussion? Those in favor will say aye. Aye. And opposed, no. And it's approved. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks for your patience, Paxton. All right. Hal, do you have any?
I'll remind the board we have a zoning appeal that's scheduled for Monday, November the 15th, 6 o'clock. That's the Dollar General out on Old Liberty Road and Highway 22. And that's it's an appeal from the decision of the planning board.
Was that a unanimous decision?
I believe it was.
Wasn't it? Okay. And Commissioner, have any comments tonight?
Chairman, I guess, had board meeting of the North Carolina Association of County Commissioners in Greensboro a week or so ago, and one of the things that came out of that was the importance of the ARP funds, and they, in the current budget that remains unsigned, I guess, is about $10 million that would go to the association to help smaller counties and, as a resource and administration of these funds over the course of its 5-year period. And there was a lot of discussion that that it may be extended further than the 5 years, maybe into 10 years, just simply because of the complexities, and everybody's going to be wanting to get the same projects done at the same time, and so they feel like there's a pretty good chance that it would be extended out.
All right. Any other business to come before this board tonight? I have a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
We are adjourned. Thank all of you for your patience tonight and for being with us. Those that are home, we thank you always for watching and being a part of county government. Be safe. And happy Thanksgiving.